Sometimes, be humble is the wisest advice you will ever receive. And other times, it is simply a polite way of saying, know your place. And learning to tell the difference between those two things might be one of the most important skills you ever develop. Pay attention to who gets told to be humble and who gets excused for their arrogance. Because if you look closely enough, you will notice a pattern. Humility is almost always preached downward, not upward. It flows from the top down, toward the person with less power, less status, less influence. The person at the bottom is told to be patient, to be gracious, to let it go. The person at the top is rarely told anything at all. It is easier to tell the powerless to let it go than to confront the powerful. That is just the truth. Confronting power is risky. It is uncomfortable. It creates tension. So instead of doing the hard thing, many people take the easy route. They walk up to the person who is already suffering and tell them to adjust their attitude. They manage the reaction instead of addressing the cause. Many people do not want peace. They want compliance. And they use the language of peace to get it. Be humble. Let it go. Be the bigger person. These are all beautiful ideas when they come from a genuine place. But when they are only ever directed at one side of a conflict, they stop being wisdom and start being a tool of convenience. Sometimes, be humble is just a sophisticated way of saying, accept a situation I do not want to challenge. The person causing the problem is often protected, while the person suffering it is told to be humble. Think about how many times you have seen that happen. The one who is being wronged is the one being lectured. The one doing the wrong is being given understanding, context, and patience. That is not wisdom. That is politics dressed up in the language of virtue. Humility is a virtue, but selective humility is a tool of manipulation. If humility is truly important, it should apply to everyone in the room, not just the person with less power. The moment a virtue is only required of certain people, it stops being a virtue and becomes a mechanism of control. Some advice is given to solve a problem. Other advice is given to avoid a confrontation. And you need to be sharp enough to know which one you are receiving. Not every call for humility comes from wisdom. Sometimes it comes from fear. The fear of conflict, the fear of consequences, the fear of what happens if the powerful are actually held to the same standard as everyone else. When accountability becomes risky, people often start preaching patience and humility. Watch how quickly the tone shifts the moment someone in a comfortable position feels threatened by truth. Suddenly everyone becomes a philosopher. Suddenly everyone is talking about ego and pride and the importance of grace. But none of that philosophy was present when the harm was being done. Be careful when people use virtues to defend unfair situations. Because a virtue used selectively is no longer a virtue. It is a shield. Humility should never become a requirement to tolerate disrespect. The moment someone expects you to be humble about being mistreated, they are no longer talking about character development. They are talking about your silence. Sometimes the real message is not, be humble. The real message is, stop making people uncomfortable by noticing what is happening. Your awareness is the problem. Your refusal to pretend is the problem. Your decision to name what everyone else is choosing to ignore is what is making the room tense. And so they dress it up as a conversation about your humility. A lot of people preach humility when what they really want is obedience. The powerful are often given understanding. The powerless are often given lectures. And that imbalance is so normalized that many people do not even see it anymore. They have been told to be humble so many times that they have started to believe that their discomfort is a character flaw rather than a reasonable response to an unreasonable situation. Question any advice that is only ever directed at one side of a problem. True wisdom applies evenly. True humility is for everyone, not just for the person with fewer options, not just for the one who is already carrying more than their share. If the advice being given to you would never be given to the person who wronged you, then that advice was never really about your growth. It was about your compliance. Know the difference and protect yourself accordingly. Save this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it.